In this video, I want to show you at least 5 simple camera techniques that anyone can do with a camera like this or a camera that you got in your pocket. Va? Fresh forest there. I've been working as a full-time YouTuber now for a little bit more than 4.5 years, and one thing that I've learned is that you gotta be able to make videos fast if you want to be a YouTuber. Sometimes there's a trend that you need to hop on and you gotta go out and shoot a video fast, or maybe there's a company that hired you to make a video on their product that is going to go live the day after tomorrow. Then in that case, you need to be able to capture those shots that is needed for that particular video without having to think too much about how you're going to capture them. And there is a couple of techniques that I use in my videos almost all the time whenever I need to go out and shoot stuff quickly. And I want to show all of them to you in this video so that you can do that on your own whenever you need to shoot a video and you need to be fast, you want it to look good, and all of those things. So we're going to start out with the first technique, which is the slide. Super simple, but also incredibly effective. It basically comes down to you holding a camera like this and then moving your entire body like this. My weapon of choice is going to be the ZV-E1 with the 16 to 35mm lens. And that is basically to show you how versatile this lens and this setup can be in a situation like this. You don't need to have one of these though, because these camera techniques works with whatever kind of camera that you got. As you probably already guessed, the slide is basically keeping the camera close to you and then moving your entire body like this. Now, there will be some people that will do like this, and it is totally fine. You just gotta be aware of what kind of shot it is that you're getting, because when you're moving your arms like that, it's gonna look way more shaky than if you're moving your entire body like this. Let me show you how it looks. I'm sorry for the incredibly dirty car, but this is summer. Bugs everywhere. Start the camera over here and then move it towards this point. That is how you make a slide. It is so freaking simple. Anyone can do it with any kind of camera. And that brings us to our next technique, which is the manual focus. The manual focus might sound like a very obvious thing, but for some of you that haven't picked up a camera once before, it might be the most amazing thing that has ever happened to you. I remember when I started shooting my videos, I got used to autofocus so freaking quick, and manual focus was something that blew my mind when I started to use that back in 2019 when I was shooting the B-rolls. Basically every time that I shoot any sort of beauty shots, manual focus it is. The only time that I actually use autofocus is when I want to track a person, a car, or when I'm recording these kind of videos so that I'm like locked on to my eye, which is kind of sick. But when you're using manual focus, you have so much more control of how your shot is going to turn out instead of relying solely on the autofocus. For example, when I was shooting the headlights of the car, I sort of like slide to the end point, set the manual focus, and then I go back and then slide again so that we know that the focus is not gonna hunt when we're doing the slide. It is so crucial that you know how to use the manual focus if you want to get those really crispy and creamy beauty shots of the things that you're doing. But it's also pretty cool to use manual focus whenever you are, out and about and you're doing things. For example, when I was driving here with the car, I wanted to show you that I was driving really fast. But when you have a locked off shot, like a camera on a tripod, that is very hard to do. But I move the camera close to a flower that is growing just next to the road, set the manual focus, and then drove past it, and there's a woo. And the only way that I could actually achieve that and make sure that the focus is not going all over the place is by using manual focus. Autofocus is great, but if you rely too much on autofocus, it's going to be very hard to use manual focus. You can choose which kind of spot that you want the focus to be on, and then you can move the camera in close from being out of focus to into focus, and then you can just reverse that in post, and you can play around with it so much. But one thing that I love about that technique is that I can use it in my vlogs and have a highlight on one thing that is in the foreground of the shot, and then you can see that someone or me is moving in the background of the shot. And it's also great to use whenever you're doing a locked off shot, you're having your camera on a tripod and you want to shoot a time lapse, then make sure you set manual focus. If someone walks past your camera, you don't want the autofocus to sort of like hunt for you again when you're doing your thing at the other side of the lens. And when you combine the slide motion with the manual focus, you don't have to take into consideration things that are going in front of your camera lens. In this example, I can just move back here behind this tree and then zoom in to 35 millimeters. I'm gonna set the focus point and then I'm gonna move back behind the tree and slide out. I don't know what you think, but that shot looks so freaking good, and it takes me less than 10 seconds to make just by using a slide movement, manual focus, and a little bit of a foreground. Go try it. It looks so good. The result of your video will also depend a whole lot on what kind of lens it is that you're using. Something that I usually tend to think of is, what is it that I shoot the most? So if you shoot people mostly and you want to make sure that you have these nice detailed shots of faces, then you might want to go to a tighter lens. But for what I do, making YouTube videos and trying to grab snappy B-roll on the go, 16-35 is a very good lens. When you're doing the slide movement, you can use whatever kind of lens that you want. You can use a 14mm, 50mm, even a 200mm, and it's probably going to look good. But for the next movement, I highly recommend something that is wide, such as the 16-35. I'm gonna show you why. So if I want to do a push-in shot of my car here in the front to make it feel like one of those epic hero shots that you see in the movies, it's gonna be very hard to do with the 50mm. First off, I'd probably have to move like really far back, mainly because we can't fit the entire car in the frame. But here we go. So now we're gonna be sure that we have it in focus. And then I'm just gonna push in. And looking at the shot, you can see that it doesn't really look as good as we would like it to do. Like there's not a lot of things happening into the shot. It doesn't look like the camera is moving much at all, mainly because we're at such a tight focal length. And that is why a wide angle lens is really important for those kinds of shots. Let's do the same thing with 16-35 at 16mm to show you the difference, right? Here we go, and push in. You can see that there's a lot more movement going on in the wide angle shot than what it is in the tight shot. So when you're doing the push in, try to opt in for a wider lens. I'm gonna say that anything from 35 and down is gonna give you a really good effect, but anything above, try to stay with the slide. I'm also gonna give you a pro tip here. If you're doing the slide, one thing that you can do is combine that with the pan. And the pan is basically when you're doing this with the camera. So slide and pan. And usually what you try to do whenever you want to make one of those cool looking sliding panning shots is that you want to pan the camera the opposite direction from where you're sliding. So if I go this way with my body, the camera goes the other way. So it sort of like makes this parallax effect whenever you're sliding. And whenever I'm short on time and I need to grab a couple of beauty shots or environmental shots that look crispy and nice, that is what I try to do, or do the push in with a little bit of foreground. So combining all these with foregrounds, especially when you combine it with some epic freaking music. And the music that I'm using for my videos is from Artlist. Now, the good thing about Artlist is they have all these different genres that you can select from, but also the different moods that you can choose from when you go onto the site. So if you want to make an epic video of your, I don't know, outdoor furnitures, Artlist is the place to go if you want to find that epic piece of music and then combine that with some epic sound effects. And sound effects is a crucial thing to make your video stand out from the crowd, but also elevate the entire story and video that it is that you're creating. So I'm going to drop a link in the description to Artlist, and you're going to get 2 months for free if you use that link. Highly recommended. You're not going to be disappointed. I've been using them ever since 2019. That's 5 years non-stop. Can highly recommend. The next move is something that I learned when I was shooting a lot of B-rolls back in 2020 because I wanted to have as smooth footage as I possibly could while still not using a gimbal. And to be able to get those smooth, sort of like handled shots, one thing that I learned was the slow-mo twist. I don't know if that is what it's called, but we're gonna put a patent on it, and then we're gonna say that Peter came up with this. If I were to capture some nice looking B-roll shots of the weights here in the background, then of course I could do sort of like the push in, I could use the slide, then combine the slide with the pan, but doing the slow-mo twist is gonna make it look a little bit more alive. We're gonna make sure that we have the camera set to manual focus for this because we don't want the autofocus to hunt midway through the shot. So we're gonna start over here and we're gonna have the camera on a little bit of an angle and then we're gonna twist it. Looks good. And there we go. If I were to do the same thing without doing the twist, it's gonna look like this. Looking at those two shots side by side, I'm gonna say that my personal preference is the slow-mo twist. But you might have noticed that when I was using this technique in particular, I start with my arms out here and then pull them towards my body. And the reason for it is because we're doing the twist at the same time. So it's gonna be hard to twist your entire body. Having the twist and then leaning back when you get closer to your body is gonna be a great way to keep the stability in the shot. Then again, adding a little bit of stabilization in Final Cut Pro is gonna make it creme de la creme. The last trick that I got up in my sleeve here, and the last technique that I want to leave you with, is the thumb pull. It's basically all about how you're holding your camera. So in this case, I'm holding it like this and then doing the thumb twist like that. I don't know how it works on different cameras because I'm using Sony cameras, but whenever I'm using this zoom, I basically push my thumb down to change the focal length, which is kind of sick. All right, let's do it. See if we can make it happen. I think that this looks good and that. So it's not going to give you perfectly smooth shots because, you know, there's always going to be a little bit of shake, but when you add a little bit of stabilization in Final Cut Pro, it starts to look good. I think today is probably one of the hottest days in Sweden as of this year. It's like, I'm really hoping that this is gonna stay throughout the entire summer. It's also very bright, and as you probably saw, I'm not using an ND filter on my camera. The cool thing is that when you're shooting in slow-mo, I don't think that the motion blur is that important, so just cranking the shutter, it's gonna be just fine. Most of these techniques works the best when you are shooting in 4K 120. Some of them, like the pan, for example, will absolutely work if you're shooting in regular 25 or 24 FPS. But the way that I use it is when I actually have 4K slow-mo. You don't have to be 120 FPS, you can go to 100 or even 50 or 60 FPS. And when you start to combine all these techniques together as one, then you can start to create some really epic stuff, even though your objects are just inanimate. I really hope that you liked this video, and if this is your first time here, don't forget to subscribe because I would love to see you in the next video. And I will say, hope you're doing well, and don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. Peter from Sweden is saying goodbye.